Hello, and welcome to the HTML 101 Kickstart video course. I want to say congratulations on grabbing access to this video course. Many people, whether you're involved in online business, online careers, or anything to do with setting up web pages or landing pages, regardless of what niche that you are in, oftentimes face these technological pains over and over again when it comes to setting up these basic landing pages. Even if you're using something like WordPress or Joomla, and it's a content management system where most things are done for you, there will be times when you need to edit things like hyperlinks, or even basic things like headers, images, or break tags to make things look nice, and you run into snags along the way. If you run into those snags, like everybody else along the road, because you do not know basic HTML coding, then don't fret. That's the purpose of this video course. What I want to do is start out with some of the basics, and then we'll move out to some more advanced stuff when you feel like you're more confident and you've gotten your feet wet. Before you jump into the introduction piece, I want to give you a quick overview of the videos. So obviously, this is going to be video number 1. Lesson number 2 is going to be about hacking without knowing code. I want to start out with utilizing an HTML editing tool called a WYSWYG tool. More on that in just a minute. By utilizing that tool, it'll get your feet wet so that you can feel a little bit more confident when it comes to HTML code. You'll be able to see the code, and you'll be able to see what it looks like in the browser view. In lesson number 3, we're going to talk about the basics of open and close tags. Once you understand this basic concept and how HTML code opens and closes via their tags, which is very simple by the way, it will make more sense. Then, from that point on, we will home in and focus on specific tags that you will run into during your journey. Headings are something that you're going to run into again and again. We're going to focus on that in lesson number 4. In lesson number 5, we're going to talk about break tags. Break tags allow you to break sentences up so that you have white space in between. This is also good for creating white space between images and everything like that. In lesson number 6, we're going to talk about basic formatting, underlining, bolding, italicizing, and things like that you are going to run into. In lesson number 7, we're going to talk about lists, unordered lists or ordered lists. How do you create these types of lists? This is something that you're going to want to do. In lesson number 8, we're going to talk about image tags and how to make them SEO friendly. Of course, in lesson number 9, we're going to talk about hyperlinks, not just how to create a hyperlink, but how to make it so when somebody clicks on it, it opens up in a new window. In order to memorize HTML code, I want to give you some pointers. You do not need to learn all HTML code, so that's good. Do not get freaked out or anything like that. You do not need to learn all HTML code. You just need to know the basics, and it will make more sense as we dive in. What I recommend you do is refer back to this video course at a later time. If you want to watch through the end of the video course and then implement things and refer back, that's totally fine. One thing I've found that helps when it comes to memorization is to do things while I teach. If you want, just pause the video at any time and then implement it yourself. That will stick more strongly in your brain. That works very well with kinesthetic visual learners. You can watch all the way to the end and follow along. That's totally fine. So, do what's best for you. Now, let's talk about the tools that you're going to need. Obviously, I'm not going to require you to dish out any more money. So we're going to stick with a lot of free things, like Composer. Composer is a tool that is discontinued, so just search for Composer alternatives. You can find Silex for free, as well as OpenElement. I still use Composer because Composer is a great way to hack without needing to know a lot of code, and you can still download it. Composer is another WYSIWYG HTML editor tool that you can still download for free. You don't have to use Composer if you don't want to. This course is not about which tool to use. It is about HTML coding kickstart. If you want, you can go to Google and type in WYSI HTML editor, as you can see here. Then you'll see a variety of other tools. WYSI stands for what you see is what you get. That means that it's kind of like Microsoft Word in the sense that you can see what's happening on the screen, but on the back end, there's a lot of code that's happening. So I'll show you that in just a minute. So that's it. Nothing really fancy. Just go ahead and choose your own HTML editor. Blue Griffin is a good one. You see it on the screen as a web editing tool, and the code will actually be shown on the back end. This one is for Windows. So if you're using a Mac or a Linux computer, that's fine. It is compatible with those as well. You just go to the download link here. You'll be able to see there's a stable version and there is a developed version. But if you scroll to about the midpoint of the page, you'll see different languages. You'll see them for Windows Installer, Windows zip files, Mac OS, download images, and Linux as well. It is compatible with just about any type of PC and operating system. Go ahead and download the app and install that onto your computer. Before I move on to video number 2, we are going to talk about the basic structure of an HTML body. Whenever you create a new HTML page, this is basically what it looks like. At the top, you're going to have an HTML tag, and think about it wrapping it around. So, you have the HTML, and you have the head, which is right underneath the HTML. Think of it like this. This is an HTML page, and then the next thing you'll see is the head. If you think about a human body, you have the head, and then right below that, you could have a name tag, like the title or something. Then, right below that, you have a body. Then, of course, you have your feet and everything like that. That's probably the easiest way to think about it. You have HTML. You can think of a stick figure or something. You've got the HTML guy. He's got a head. Then he's got a name tag that has his title. And he's got a body. If you can remember that, then it's fairly easy to understand it when I move on to video number 2 and I break it down for you. So, let's move on to video number 2, and it'll make a lot more sense when we get there. Hi, welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about hacking HTML without knowing any code. What I mean by this is you will be able to set up landing pages and basic web pages without coding. Understanding how to do that without knowing code is a great way to get your feet wet and get yourself confident. So let's get started. What I want you to do now is go ahead and open up your HTML editor. You can pause this video if you need to, then we'll continue. You know, we're using a tool that will allow us to see what the user sees via the browser without having to add our own code, right? This is the normal view. At the very bottom left-hand corner, you're going to see the normal tab, as you can see, and then you're going to see the source tab. The source tab is going to reveal the actual HTML code to us. As I stated in the previous video, when I went over the basic structure, you can see there is an HTML tag here. There is a heading tag, and the heading tag gets closed here, and then the body starts here, and so forth. I will talk more about open and close tags and the concept of that in the next video. Don't worry about that right now. Let's just focus on utilizing the tool so that you can use it, get confident, get your feet wet right now. The nice thing about most HTML editors is they look kind of like Microsoft Word, but a simplified version of it. See, what you see is what you get. What you see in a normal tab is what you get. Let's say, for example, that we are going to say dog training, and then we highlight that, and we could center align that, as you can see here. We can left align, right align, and so forth. You can hold it, and you can make it bigger by clicking here. You can also make it smaller. What you see here is what the user is going to see, and that is the what you see is what you get HTML editor. You can change the color, let's say to red. and you can also change the background to something like yellow. You can also go further, and you can add things like tables. Let's go back here and remove the highlight, and then we can add a table. HTML editors will give you the ability to specify how many columns and how many rows you have. In this case, I'm going to do 4, and you can specify the cell spacing, which is how much space you have in between the cells. This is a table here. We can always tweak it if we would like to. If we right-click here, for example, and we go to Table Cell Properties, then we go to Table, we can add more rows. So if we are not satisfied that it only has 2, we can always add 10. If we're not so satisfied by 2 columns, we could add something like 5. And we could also remove the border. You can see the border here. We can remove it so that the users do not see the border and it becomes like this. If we do that, then the user can't see the actual border and they don't realize that there's a table there. Then you can start adding text. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. In addition to that, you can also add images. You can add forms. You can also add links to other websites. And you can make sure that they open in a new window. So if somebody clicks on your link and you want them to stay on your web page, but you want to link them to another page and have it open in a new window, you can do that. Let's use something like google.com as an example. You can say the link is to be opened in a new window. When somebody clicks this link, it's going to open a brand new window. That way, they don't forget about your own window. I'm going to show you the code to do this, because once you have memorized this code, it's going to make your life a lot easier. You're not going to have to fully rely on HTML editor, which would just slow you down. If we take a look in the source, we can see that it has changed from the basic HTML header, body, and so forth. Now, we have a huge empty table here, which is the table we made. That's what's so easy about HTML. You can specify. You can read this, and you can say, okay, here's a table. Here is the actual link right here. It'll make more sense. Don't worry about it. Don't let this code freak you out or anything like that. I just wanted to show you that it changed, and it changed slightly. You can also add things like images. So, if we click on image here, we can specify the location of the image. One thing to be aware of with HTML editors is when you specify the location of the image, you can run into some problems. We'll pick one image here by default. Let's say, for example, that we're going to choose this image here. Now, as you can see, this image location is pointing straight to my computer, which is not really what we want. We want it to point to the actual website. Now, in general, I'd say the easiest way to do it is simply to link directly to the image itself. I would put the image file name here, and I would remove everything else before that. That way, the image actually shows up. You can see the image because right now it is pointing to the website. If you know how to add an image via the actual HTML code, and you know the HTML code itself, then you won't have to face this problem. You will know how to fix this issue, which is why I say we are going to focus on these basic tags, and then you'll learn exactly how to make these tags. They're standard. They did not change, and because that is the case, my hope is by the end of this video course, when you run into these issues, you will no longer have these issues again, because you will have the right weapon, which is the code, in hand and in your brain. So, that's how to add an image. We'll talk more about the other codes in the next video. In this particular video, we're going to talk about open and close tags. These are the basic fundamentals. Once you understand this, it's going to make more sense when you see the code itself. Basically, in order to create HTML documents, it always has to have an HTML with brackets surrounding it and then a closed tag, which looks like the open tag, except you have a slash right before the words that are inside of the bracket. Just understand that this is an open tag, and this is a closed tag. All the tags that you're going to see in the codes, in the syntax, and in the language will have an open tag and a closed tag, with exception of the break tag. I'll show you that in just a minute. Now, if we go over to our HTML editor and take a look at the source code here, you'll notice that the HTML tag starts here and then it comes up right here. Then, of course, the head tag has what we call an open tag. It opens it up right here. And then you have to close the head right here. It's the same with the title tag. This is opening the title. And then you can put the actual title here. Let's say, for example, that we have a dog training blog post that talks about how to stop your puppy from biting. You know how you go to Google and you see the titles for each website, then you see a description. That is where the title is, right here. You're getting a quick glimpse of how the code here gets read by the browser, and then by Google or other search engines. You see how this works? We have an open tag, and then we close this sentence with the close tag, or this particular word, title. Then, of course, is the heading. You can see here we close the heading. Then, after you close the head, you can start with the body. You see how the body starts here, and then the body closes here? Everything else that's inside of your landing page is going to be inside of the body. Notice that the break tag does not have an open and close tag. The break tag can essentially stand alone. You're going to have some words that are standalone, which don't need an open and close. Let's go to the normal view. Let's say, for example, that we want to center align a word. We'll do word, and we will center align that. Now, if I go to source, you can see that a div tag is being used to center align that word, and the div tag gets closed. Don't worry about the div tag or all these other tags. I'm trying to explain the concept that, in most cases, something has to be opened and closed. You can have all sorts of words, and then you close it down. Now, I'll go back to normal. Let's say I want to bold a word, and I go back to source. You can see that the style has been added for bold. You don't need to know this stuff. I'm just showing you this so that you understand that for most cases, there's an open tag and a close tag. Then, of course, there are certain rare cases like the break tag, which can stand alone. That tag does not need an open and close tag. Essentially, it is the same. Now that you understand this concept, you can begin to move on to the next videos. We'll go over the basic tags, like the break tag, the hyperlink tag, and everything like that. Don't worry about understanding the tags and what they mean yet. Just understand that we have the basic HTML tag, and then it closes down. We have the basic head tag, and it closes down. One way to learn HTML without me even teaching you is simply by going to the normal view and doing one step at a time, like I showed you earlier. We start from scratch and go down here. I click on source, and I can see what has changed. So, I've essentially made a lot of breaks. I put spaces and enters down here, and I put the word here. Take a look at source and ask yourself what has changed. Look at the code, see what has changed, and then do the next step. Make it bold and see what has changed at that point. That's another good way to learn HTML from scratch, by actually doing something to it that you want to do, whether that's changing the color, making it bigger, or changing the heading. That's a good way to learn HTML in a step-by-step manner. With that said, I'm going to go to the next videos, and we will show you other tags that are very common and that you are likely to face. See you there! Hello and welcome back. In this particular video, we're going to talk about heading tags. As you know, whenever you create a blog post, a landing page, or a website, the headings at the very top tend to be very big. That's what we are going to talk about, that particular tag. Now, that particular tag, people refer to it as H1 tags, H2 tags, H3 tags, and more. Let me explain what it's defined by. If we do H1 tag, remember, there are two brackets that are surrounding the word H1. It can be lowercase h or it can be uppercase H. It really doesn't matter. If you're wondering if there's a difference, no, there is really no difference. You open the tag up, and now you can put the word. This is going to be your headline or your heading, the big word, title, or whatever you want it to be. You will write out the headline text here. When it's time to close that down, remember, it's going to be H1, except the end tag is going to have a slash right before the word. If I minimize this, that's what it looks like. So you put H1, the actual text, and then you close it out by doing H1 with a slash right before here. Bracket, slash, and then the word. That's what the H1 tag or headline tag is now. If you want to have a heading, but you don't want it to be as big as the first headline, or maybe you have like a sub-headline that you want it to be a little bit smaller, then you increase the number. It's a little bit of backwards thinking. It's number 1 as the top number, then number 2 and number 3. If you think about the Olympics, for example, you have the number 1 person, the number 2 person, and the number 3 person. The number 1 person has a bigger prize. So in this case, number 1 is the bigger headline. The number 2 person in the Olympics has a prize that is not as big as number 1's prize, but is a lot bigger than number 3's prize. That's kind of how it works. If you want to decrease in size, it would go H2, H3, H4, and so forth. You would do the exact same thing. This could be something like a sub-headline text. Then we can close that off with slash H2. This could be something like a sectional headline, and we close it off with slash H3. So, as the number gets bigger, the heading gets smaller, but it's still a headline. Now, when Google comes along, for example, and they read these headlines, they say, okay, this is the headline. This might be not as important as this headline. We don't know exactly, but that's what we've seen. Now, you can go back over to your HTML editor and apply this knowledge that I've taught you. Go here, and we'll create a blank page. We're going to go down here, and I'm going to say headline text. I'm going to go under the body text drop down here. Click on that, and we're going to see heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Obviously, the main big headline is going to be H1. If I go to the source tab, you will be able to see that it does indeed say H1 headline text, and then it closes it off. Of course, if we highlight this again and we change it to heading 2, you see how it gets smaller? Change it to heading 3 and it gets smaller. The greater the heading, the smaller we get. If you think about the Olympic analogy that I talked about earlier, that's how it works. This is heading 3. If we take a look at the source code here, we can see it starts with H3 and then it closes off. I wanted to cover headlines simply because headlines are something that you're, generally speaking, going to use all the time, especially when it comes to landing pages, web pages, and even WordPress. Any type of content management system will use this type of code. It's universal. Hopefully, that makes sense, and we'll move on to the next video. The next thing I want to talk about is break tags. I briefly talked about this in the previous videos, but break tags are something that you're going to use over and over again. Most likely you will run into them, or you'll run into a situation where you will need to use them. What are break tags? Break tags are essentially pressing the Enter key on your keyboard. For example, we have a sentence, and then we have a sentence, and then we press the Enter on our keyboard and it goes down. That's what break tags essentially do, but they do them within the HTML world. If you want to spread images apart and have one image at the top, maybe a few breaks in between, then an image, or if you want to break apart a paragraph, you use break tags. It really adds white space and makes things look a lot nicer, so that they're not all clumped together. That's really what break tags are all about. Break tags will look like this. They have the brackets around them like usual, and then they have BR. You can do BR lowercase or BR capitalized, and it doesn't really matter. I like to keep things consistent, so I try to do things lowercase. It's really up to you. If you're thinking, does it really matter? Well, there you go. Now, break tags will sometimes look like this, where it has a BR space slash, but they do the same thing. Break tags don't have an open tag and close tag. It is just combined together. So, essentially, the break tag is the open and close tag itself. This is one of the special cases where there isn't really an open and close. Here's what's nice about breaks. Let's say, for example, you have a whole paragraph. We have paragraph like this. So, this is a paragraph. What's nice about the break is, yes, if you are using an HTML editor like Composer, you can simply go through and press enter. If you're looking at the code from the standpoint of just the code itself, and you want to put breaks into the paragraph or the images, it's just not doing it, then you can always go into the code. You can find where there should be breaks and just put the BR tag. You could put the BR tag here. Let's say I want to break here, 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 and here. When I copy this over, for example, into Composer, into the source tag, you can see that there are breaks. We've broken it up here. If we go back to the source tab and we say, okay, it had a break, but we want an additional break to create kind of an empty space or a line in between these paragraphs, then all I have to do is add 2 breaks connected to each other. There we go. Obviously, adding breaks is very easy, and when I go back to the normal view, I'm able to see that. So, like I said, for the majority of cases, you can use a WYSI/WYG editor, but there are some cases that you will run into where the editor is messing up. I've seen sometimes when editing WordPress, you're editing the code and you're running into issues. Knowing that I can go to the source code and simply add a break tag to the source code makes life a lot easier. Same thing with images. You can add an image. We can go here and we can add an image. Let's say, for example, that it looks like this. You've got text here, and then you've got an image here. With a WYSI/WYG editor, obviously, all you have to do is press enter. But if you were reading the code and you couldn't figure out why the editor was doing that, you could find the image, which is defined by the image tag here, which you'll learn later on. Once you find that, all you have to do is add a break tag to it. For example, if I want to add 3 break tags, I'll go back to normal view, and you can see that there are 3 break tags right here. So, that's what the break tag does. It actually comes in handy in many cases. You wouldn't believe how many cases it would come in handy. It doesn't really make sense right now, but it'll make a lot more sense when you begin to set up any pages, set up your WordPress sites, or anything like that. It just makes life a lot easier when you understand how to use it. That's how simple break tag is. Just remember, it's BR, or sometimes it's BR/ as well. I like to just keep it simple and stick with that. And there you go. Let's talk about text formatting. Basically, that means bolding words, italicizing words, or even underlining words. This is a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to break it down. As you can see here, it starts with the span tag. We have span style equals quotation, and within the quotation, you pretty much have all the formatting. Then, of course, you close that span tag off right here. As you read it, it will make more sense. So, font weights. Think about weights as analogy of how heavy or light something is. If you think about bold and how you bold a letter, if you were to be able to measure the weight of a letter and you bold it, you make the font weight bold. What I'm trying to do here is give you some analogies that would make sense. It doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but these are things that I use in my own brain to memorize these things. So, font weight equals bold font style. We have different stylized fonts. We have italicized. We have other different styles. And then we have text decoration. You could decorate the text with an underline. It would make more sense if we go back over to Composer here. Like I said in the beginning, I would recommend you do a step and take a look at the source code, then do a step and take a look at the source code again. What I mean by that is bold the word, then look at the source code and see what changes before you do anything else. Then go back, italicize it, and see what changed. What I would do from that point would be trying to memorize that. Now, if I were you, I wouldn't really go all out. I would just memorize the basics: bold, italicize, and underline. Those are the main things that you're going to use. If you get all fancy, that's fine. But go into your HTML editor and just copy and paste the code into the editor. If we go back here, right now the hello tag, or the hello word, has nothing around it except for break tags and the basic structure. if I go to normal and I make it a larger font size, then go back to source, we can see that the only change is that there is a big tag surrounding it. Now, let's make it bold. We'll start from scratch. Say, hello, this is a test. We'll just make it bold. And let's see what happens. So, if we go back to the source, we can see that it says span style quotation quotation, and it says font weight bold. That's all it says. We have to memorize this right here. That's all you have to memorize. Span style quotation quotation. Within that, it's font dash weight colon space bold. Okay? Now, let's remove the bold and let's just make it italicized. If you click on source and you take a look at it, it says span style quotation font dash style colon space italic. So, you're basically saying the font style is italic, and then you put a semicolon right here if you want to add more, such as something like font dash weight colon bold. We could do that as well. We can see that it has bold and italicize. If we add an underline, when we click on source, we can see that text decoration. It's text dash decoration colon space underline. The semicolon, as you can see, kind of separates the differences. We have 3 different items here, and you can see that after this, we put a semicolon to say that we're separating this and this. So this is a new item. We have a semicolon and then a new item. That's what I recommend that you do. There's a lot of other different formatting if you want to learn. If we uncheck all of these, go up to the top, and click on Format, you can see that Composer gives you a lot more options, such as font, different types of font, sizes, and different types of sizes. You have text style. Besides bold, italicized, and underline, you have a strike-through, superscripts, subscript, and other types of text styles. But the majority of the time, you're going to use these 3. You're rarely going to use all of these other ones, so that's why I wanted to show you this. Then, of course, you have text colors. If we stick with the simplicity and we just change this to, say, a red, you can see that the span style says color-red. HTML, as you can see, is one of the easiest languages because what you see is what you get. When you say like color red, it's pretty obvious that the color is red. So if you wanted to hack HTML code and you had a bunch of code, you could literally go through it and figure out what it is about simply by learning these basics that I'm teaching you in this video course, and then just testing it out yourself by trial and error. Remember, at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff will only stick in your mind if you practice. So, with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let's move on to the next video. Let's talk about how to create lists. I'm going to talk about 2 different types of lists: ordered lists and unordered lists, or what we call bulleted lists. These are things that you're going to use often. The first thing I want to do is show you what the unordered list looks like, and that's unordered meaning bulleted. We have something like this: A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This would be considered an unordered list, okay? So, if we think about the abbreviation of an unordered list, it is unordered list. That's the UL. We have bracket, and then we to close that bracket. Of course, it is UL, and then bracket, and the slash. Lists are a little bit different than normal tags, because within each list, you have the actual LI. LI stands for the bullet or the list item. You can have as many LIs as you want, so you're going to need to have LI and /LI. This tells us that this is a list. So let me do this again. Let's say, for example, we want to duplicate dog, cat. We start the unordered list with this tag, and then we finish the list with this tag. Now, each one of these items are going to be this, right? This is going to be dog, cat, and hamster. Pretty simple, right? After that, you just need to understand the concept that you have the open tag here, the closed tag here, and then the items that are surrounded by the LI tag. So it's LI dog /LI, LI cat, close the tag. li hamster, and then close that tag. Now that you understand that, I want to talk about ordered lists. Ordered lists are going to be something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, if I switched to this, the only items that need to change here are the open tag and the close tag. Everything else, like the LIs, stays the same. If you think about the abbreviation for ordered list, that's OL, right? OL. Pretty simple. So, we have opened this ordered list. We have the 3 items. Then, of course, right below that, we close the /OL. That's basically how to create an ordered list. Once you have that concept and an understanding of an unordered list, then the ordered list is the same thing except for the open and close tag. Now, if we head on over to Composer here, you can actually see the same thing. So, I'll create an unordered list and do the same thing. I'll put dog, cat, and hamster. Maybe we'll throw a few things other than that inside. We could say gecko. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that you can see it. If I go to source code here, you can see that it is UL and then closed UL. Then, of course, in between the list, we have LIs. As far as formatting goes, you notice that it says big, 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 and /big. That's how to create it, and that's how easy it is. Now I will highlight this and put it into ordered or numbered lists. We call it ordered lists because if you go to source and you look at it, the only thing that has changed is the UL to OL. So, unordered list changed to ordered list. And then we close that tag down. If you can understand this process, then creating lists of 2 different types is very easy to do. So, with that said, let's move on to the next video. Okay, so welcome back. In this particular video, we are going to discuss the image tag. You are going to run into this tag over and over again. If you're looking at this tag thinking, wow, it is kind of complicated, it's not really. Basically, the image tag really looks like this. All the rest of it I'll explain in just a minute. The image tag allows you to grab any image, whether it's an external image from a different website or even your internal image that might be sitting on your website. It acts just like a hyperlink, and you'll learn about that later on. Where it starts out with a tag is here, of course. These brackets surrounding it. It starts with IMG, standing for image, and then you put a space. Then you put SRC, which stands for source. It's basically image source equals quotation, quotation, and then the file name goes inside. Like I said, this could be a file that is sitting on your server. It doesn't necessarily have to be a .jpeg or .jpg. It can be a .png file, a .gif, or any sort of image file. It will work. This can link here. This can link to www.yourdomain.com/imagename.jag, or whatever the image extension might be. That's how easy it is to create an image tag. And we did that without having to even go to our HTML editor. You can simply type this in and pull any image that you want in. What you saw earlier was the alt tag. We'll add to the alt tag. So after we've done this, after the quotation has closed that URL off, we can put a space and we can put the word alt equals quotation, quotation. The alt tag is basically going to tell Google or any other search engine robot what the image is all about. So what you're doing is taking it a step further and making it more search engine friendly. The alt tag is pointing to what it is all about. Let's say, for example, this is an image of a puppy. Let's say it's a golden retriever puppy. You would type in golden retriever puppy. You might be able to type in what it's doing. Maybe it's biting, and your image is about how to stop puppies from biting. So Google will read that and it will say, okay, this must be about golden retriever puppy biting. Does the content that is surrounding it actually relate to this? If it does, then that's a good sign. Now, the other stuff that you saw was what we call the style, the width, and the height. Typically, you're not going to run into that unless you want to resize the image. So I'm not really going to teach you that right now. I would rather you go to your HTML editor and test it out there, but I don't want to overwhelm you. I want you to just memorize the tag here. Let's do that again. Starting from scratch, it's image source. I like to start with the bracket. The image tag does not have a closed tab necessarily. It's just img src. I start with image source equals. Then I put the file name inside and the extension. That's essentially it. Then we do alt tag equals quotation quotation, and then the SEO friendly keyword, and that's it. That's all you have to do. You only add the width and the height if you want to resize it. So if you want to resize it, then you can add a width and a height. For now, I just want you to learn the basics. Jump on over to your HTML editor and I'll show you. So I've got Composer here, and let's say, for example, that I'm going to center align this image. I'm going to go ahead and click on image, and I'm going to find an image. These images are on my computer, obviously. I click on Do Not Use Alternate Text. Typically in Composer, if you do not enter alternate text, it will give you a warning message. So you want to enter the alternate text, which is basically what the Google robot uses to see what your images are all about. So we can say puppy biting, and we click OK. There we go. Obviously, this is not an image of a puppy biting. I'm just using this as an example. If you click on source here, you'll see that we can see the IMG or the SRC down here. There's a style down here, which is telling us the style in the alt tag. If we were to remove this, this is what it would look like. We can see IMG SRC equals the location of the file. I've said this before, but Composer will generally directly link to your computer, and you don't want that. You want it to link to your website or to the file. So if this HTML file is located in the same folder as your image, then you can simply remove everything and just put the file name between the quotations. That's probably the easiest way to go. If your image is in a specific location on your website, the easiest thing to do is find a location and then put the location here. Just make sure that this is not linking to your computer, because when you upload it to the internet, nobody else can see your computer except for you. So it may work for you, but it's not going to work for everybody else. I'm going to leave it at that so we can keep it simple. If you ever want to resize it via an HTML editor without needing to know all the width, height, and styling stuff, you can always double click it and go to dimensions. You have the actual size here. You can do custom size. What I like to do is make sure that the constraint option is selected, simply because if a picture, for example, is 900 by 597, you don't want to distort it. When you decrease it down to 500, you want to keep the width and height scale the same. If I don't press constraint, as you saw I did earlier, and I just do 500 and press OK, you can see how it has distorted the image itself. That's another little tip that I have with utilizing your HTML editor. By all means, if you want to stick with your HTML editor, that's fine, but I'd highly recommend you at least memorize this simple tag. When it comes to editing with WordPress or any type of content management system that utilizes an HTML editor, sometimes you're going to run into snags along the way. If you know this tag, then you can get past simple roadblocks. So, I hope you enjoyed that video, and we'll move on to the next one. I want to just say congratulations on reaching the end of this video course. This is video number 9, and we are going to talk about hyperlinks. Hyperlinks are things that you're going to run into the majority of the time. Depending on what you want to do, the majority of time you're going to want to link to an external website from a specific keyword, what we call anchor text, and you may want to link within your website itself. What I've found over the years is a lot of the stuff that I've taught you is stuff you will see, but when it comes to hyperlinks, this is one of the main things that you're going to see, because linking to other websites, or even within your website, is very important. It's important to know how to link so that when somebody clicks on that link, it doesn't exit your website, but instead, it opens in a new window, so people stay on your website. Getting it so that the link opens in a new window is important to know as well. Let me explain to you in a lot more detail so that you fully understand. If at this point you're thinking, well, I'm a little bit confused here, it's okay. Let's start from scratch. Let's say, for example, that we have a paragraph, and on that paragraph, or even that image, which we'll talk about later, we want to turn this specific keyword into a hyperlink. Let's say, for example, at the end of the paragraph it says, click here, and we want to turn that into a hyperlink. So the question is, how do we turn this word into a link so that we link from here to an external page and so forth? What I'm highlighting right here is what we call the anchor text, and you'll hear this being thrown around a lot. The anchor text is the text that is linking to an external website or to an internal URL. Now that you understand that, you can hyperlink this and turn that into an anchor text. You can anchor text any word that you want or even any image you want. To break things down here, this is essentially what it looks like. You need to anchor text, which is going to be the text that you highlight. Then, the hyperlink is going to be the link that you're going to link them to. Then, this is merely the action. When they read the anchor text, they'll click on the hyperlink. Then, they go to another website or URL. That's how the process works. Once you understand the process here, let's talk about how to break it down. Let's say we use click here because that's common. So, the tag looks like this, bracket first, and then it starts with an A. I like to do this, A and then bracket / A. It gets a little bit more complicated after this, but not that complicated. So it's generally better to start with that /A. After the A, you put href equals quotation quotation. Within the quotation, you want to put the URL or the hyperlink. We're going to do http://www.yourdomain.com. This could be within your website, or it could be any website. It doesn't matter. I highly recommend, if it is your own website, that you leave it like that. Within here, you're going to want to put the anchor text. If I were to just finish at this point and click the click here, then it would bring me to this URL right here. This is something that I would use if I were linking or interlinking within my own website, because I don't really want it to open in a brand new window. If I were to link to an external website, I want people to stay on my website as well. Then here's what I would do. We go back over here, and before this end tag bracket closes, we put another space and we put the word target, and we do equals quotation quotation. Then we put underscore blank. Now, what in the world does that mean? Well, target means where you want them to go. What it means is it will open in a new window, so underscore blank means in a new window. You're just going to have to memorize this. If you wanted to open a brand new window, I would put that. If you can get to this point, just adding the underscore blank and target equals quotation underscore blank quotation and closing that off will open it in a brand new window. Believe it or not, this is as simple can be if you memorize it. You'll be set. As far as creating hyperlinks and it creating backlinks to other sites goes. This is something that you're going to run into many times in the future. You can do the same thing if this is a zip file. For example, that you want people to download a zip file. You can simply link them to the zip file. So we'll use yourdomain.com. Let's say it is in the downloads folder and it's called 123.zip or even 123.mp4, which is a video file. As long as you have a URL that links to whatever you might want them to do, download zip, watch a video, go to a blog or a website, you're going to put it here. This can apply to many different cases, but we're just creating a link to link them directly to something. The target underscore blank works in all of these cases, whether it's an MP4 file, a zip file, or whatever. You can do the same thing. Now that you understand this, you're good to go. We can always go back over to here and put, say, a center align. We'll click here, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. If you highlight it, click on link, and you link them to a location like google.com, for example. Then you can set the link to open in a new window. To be honest, you're not really going to use all these other ones. Mainly, you're going to open a new window or open in the same window. So if I go ahead and click OK and click on source code, then you'll be able to see the actual code embedded into here. If you notice, it says A equals quotation, the URL quotation, space, target equals quotation, underscore, blank quotation. Then, within these here, we have the anchor text, and then we close the A tag, and that's it. That's all you have to do. If we were to hyperlink an image, on the other hand, you can see what it looks like. Let's find an image here. You can go to a link and you can link it over here. If we take a look at the source code here, you'll see that the link is here. As you can see, the link is outside of the image. So we have the link here. We haven't closed the A tag yet. We put the image here, and then we close the A tag, so that the image essentially is like the anchor text. If I go back to here, we can do that by simply putting the image and replacing the click here with the image code. You could do the same thing with other media as well. I hope you enjoyed this video course as much as I enjoyed teaching you. Make sure that you go back and work on some of this memorization. I would say just utilize any HTML editor, tweak it, and learn it every step of the way. Make one step, then look at the code, see what changed. As you do it more and more and practice it more and more, it'll stick in your mind. You'll memorize it, and you'll be good to go when that time comes, when you're utilizing something like WordPress and you run into a snag.